Hello and welcome back to my channel. And today we are going to continue our chapter on the cultural development in India. We're going to start with the passage, the Vaishnavite movement. Apart from the non-sectarian movement led by Kabir and Nanak, the Bhakti movement in North India developed around the worship of Ram and Krishna, two of the incarnations of the god Vishnu. The childhood escapades of the boy Krishna and his dalliance with the milkmaids of Gokul, especially with Radha, became the themes of a remarkable series of saint poets who lived and preached during the 15th and early 16th century. They used the love between Radha and Krishna in an allegorical manner to depict the relationship of love in its various aspects between the individual soul and the supreme soul. Like the early Sufis, Chaitanya popularized musical gathering or kirtan is as a special form of mystic experience in which the outside world disappeared by dwelling on God's name. According to Chaitanya, worship consisted of love and devotion and song and dance, which produced a state of ecstasy in which the presence of God, whom he called Hari, could be realized. Such a worship could be carried out by all, irrespective of caste or creed. Chaitanya basically popularized bhakti uh, with the means of kirtan, which was like musical gathering. And what he said was that in that state of mind, in that state of pure love and devotion and song and dance, it produced a state of ecstasy, and the presence of God, whom he called as Hari, could be felt. The writings of Narasimha Mehta in Gujarat, of Meera in Rajasthan, of Surdas in Western Uttar Pradesh, and Chaitanya in Bengal and Orissa reached extraordinary heights of lyrical fervor and of love, which transcended all boundaries, including those of caste and creed. These saints were prepared to welcome into their fold everyone, irrespective of caste and creed. This is seen most clearly in the life of Chaitanya, born and schooled in Nadia, which was the center of Vedantic rationalism. Chaitanya's tenor of life was changed when he visited Gaya at the age of 22 and was initiated into the Krishna cult by a recluse. He became a god intoxicated devotee who incessantly uttered the name of Krishna. Chaitanya is said to have traveled all over India, including Vrindavan, where he revived the Krishna cult. But most of his time was spent at Gaya. He exerted an extraordinary influence, particularly in the eastern parts of India, and attracted a wide following, including some Muslims and people from the low caste. He did not reject the scriptures or idol worship, though he cannot be classified as a traditionalist. All the saint poets mentioned above remained within the broad framework of Hinduism. Their philosophical beliefs were a brand of Vedantic monism, which emphasized the fundamental unity of God and the created world. The Vedantist philosophy had been propounded by a number of thinkers, but the one who probably influenced the saint poets the most was Vallabha, a Thailand Brahmin who lived in the last part of the 15th and the early part of the 16th century. The approach of these saint poets was broadly humanistic. They emphasized the broadest human sentiments, the sentiments of love and beauty in all their forms. Like the other non-sectarians, they were not able to make an effective breach in the caste system. However, they softened its rigor and built a platform for unity which could be apprehended by wider sections. The basic concept of the saint poets were reciprocated to a remarkable degree by the Sufi poets and saints of the period. During the 15th century, the monastic ideas of the great Arab philosopher Ibn Arabi became popular among broad sections in India. Arabi had been vehemently denounced by the orthodox elements and his followers persecuted because he held that all beings are essentially one and everything is a manifestation of a divine substance. Thus, in his opinion, the different religions were identical. Arabi's doctrine of unity of being is known as Tawheed-e-Wujudi. This doctrine kept gaining popularity in India and became the main basis of the Sufi thought before the time of Akbar. So Arabi's doctrine was the unity of being, also known, which is known as Tawheed-e Wajudi. So this is an important area by Ibn A Arabi, a Sufi philosopher. This doctrine kept gaining the popularity in India and became the main basis of the Sufi thought before the time of Akbar. Contact with yogis and Hindu saints went a long way in popularizing the concept of pantheism, one god. The uh, Indian Sufism started taking more interest in Sanskrit and Hindi, and a few of them, including Malik Muhammad Jaisi, composed their works in Hindi. The Bhakti songs of Vaishnavite saints written in Hindi and other languages touched the heart of the Sufis more than Persian poetry did. The use of Hindi songs became so popular that an eminent Sufi, Abdul Wahid Bilgravi, wrote a treatise, Haqiqi Hindi, in which he tried to explain such words as Krishna, Murli, Gopi, Radha, Yamuna, etc. in Sufi mystic terms. Thus, during the 15th century and the early part of the 16th century, the Bhakti and Sufi saints had worked out in a remarkable manner a common platform on which the people belonging to various sects and creeds could meet and understand each other. This was the essential background of the ideas of Akbar and his concept of Tawheed or unity of all religions. So, in this paragraph, I guess this term for Ibn A Arabi's Tawheed A Wajudi is important. Chaitanya is important. Telang Brahman is important. Vedantic Monism, which emphasizes on the fundamental unity of God. And what is Tawheed e Wajudi's idea, that which is the that everything is a manifestation of the divine substance and all beings are essentially one. So gradually the people started using Hindi more and they related more to Hindi than they ever did to Persian poetry. Also, Wahid Bilgrami's work, The Haqiqi Hindi. So these are the key terms, and from this we get to know that the background to Akbar's idea was developed by the Tawheed, which was tolerance for all religions or the unity of all religions. Literature and fine arts, Sanskrit language. Sanskrit continued to be a vehicle for higher thought and a medium for literature during the period under review. In fact, the production of works in Sanskrit in different branches was immense and perhaps greater than in the preceding period. Following the great Shankara, works in the field of philosophy by Ramanuja, Madhava, Vallabha, etc., continued to be written in Sanskrit. The speed with which their ideas were widely disseminated and discussed in different parts of the country showed the important role which Sanskrit continued to play during the period. There was a network of specialized schools and academies in different parts of the country, including areas under the Muslim domination. These schools and academies were not interfered with and continued to flourish. In fact, many of them took advantage of this introduction of paper to reproduce and disseminate old texts. Thus, some of the oldest available texts of Ramayana and the Mahabharata written on paper belong to the period between its 11th and 12th century. Besides philosophy, works in the field of kavya, poetical narrative, drama, fiction, medicine, astronomy, music, etc. continue to be written in Sanskrit. A large number of commentaries and digests on the Hindu law, Dharma Shastra, were prepared between the 12th and 16th century. The great Mitakshara of Vigyaneshwar, which forms one of the two principal Hindu schools of law, cannot be placed earlier than the 12th century. Another famous commentator was Chandeshwar of Bihar, who lived in the 14th century. Most of the other works were produced in the south, followed by Bengal, Mithila, and Western India under the patronage of the Hindu rulers. The Jainas too contributed to the growth of Sanskrit. Hemachandra Suri, who was who was the most eminent of these. Oddly enough, these works largely ignored the presence of Muslims in the country. Little attempt was made to translate Islamic works or Persian literature into Sanskrit. Possibly the only exception was the translation of the love story of Yusuf and Zuleikha written by the famous Persian poet Zami, and translation of works on the astrolabe used in navigation and astrology. So here we have to pay greater emphasis on the saints or the creators mentioned. So for Hindu Shastra, we have the Dharma Shastra, the Hindu law we have Dharma Shastra, also Mitakshara of Vigyaneshwar, which forms one of the two principal Hindu schools of law. We have Chindeshwar of Bihar. Also, an eminent Jain was Hemachandra Suri. In all these texts, the presence of Muslims in the country was ignored. There was little attempts to translate Persian works into Sanskrit, but the love story of Yusuf and Zuleikha, written by the famous Persian poet Rami, was translated. This was an exception, and also the translation of the works on astrolabe was done. Astrolabe is an instrument used in navigation and astrology. Arabic and Persian literature, although the greatest among also the greatest amount of literature and scientific works produced by Muslims was in Arabic, which was the language of the Prophet and was used as the language of literature and science from Spain to Baghdad. The Turks who came to India were deeply influenced by the Persian language, which had been the literally administrative language of Central Asia from the 10th century onwards. In India, the use of Arabic remained largely confined to a narrow circle of Islamic scholars and philosophers, most of the original literature on the subject being written in Arabic. A few works on science and astronomy were also translated from Arabic. In course of time, the gist of the Islamic law were prepared in Persian with the help of Indian scholars. The most well-known of these were prepared in the reign of Firuz Tughlaq, but Arabic digests continued to be prepared, the most famous of these being the Fatwa-e-Alamgiri or the Digest of Law, prepared by a group of jurists in the reign of Aurangzeb. With the arrival of the Turks in India during the 10th century, a new language, Persian, was introduced in the country. There was a resurgence of the Persian language in Iran and the Central Asia from the 10th century onwards, and some of the great poets of the Persian language, such as Ferdowsi and Shadi, lived and composed their works between the 10th and 14th centuries. From the beginning, the Turks adopted Persian as a language of literature and administration in the country. Thus, Lahore emerged as the first center for the cultivation of the Persian language. Although the works of only a few of these early writers of Persian India have survived, we find in the writings of some of them, such as Masood Said Salman, a sense of attachment and love for Lahore. However, the most notable Persian writer of the period was Amir Khusro, born in 1252 at Patiali near Badaयूं in western Uttar Pradesh, and Amir Khusro took pride in being an Indian. He says, I have praised India for two reasons. First, because India is the land of my birth and our country. Love of the country is an important obligation. Hindustan is like heaven. Its climate is better than that of Kusaran. It is green and full of flowers all the year round. The Brahmanas here are as learned as Aristotle, and there are many scholars in various fields. Khusro's love for India shows that Turkish ruling class was no longer prepared to behave as a foreign ruling class, and that the ground had been prepared for a cultural rapprochement between them and the Indians. Khusro wrote a large number of poetical works, including the historical romances. He experimented with all the poetical forms and created a new style of Persian which came to be called the Sabak-e-Hindi or the style of India. Khusro has praised the Indian languages, including Hindi, which he called Hindavi. Some of his scattered Hindi verses are found through the Hindi work Khaleek Bari, often attributed to Khusro, was in all probability the work of a later poet of the same name. He was also an accomplished musician and took part in the religious musical gatherings Sama, organized by the famous Sufi Saint Nizamuddin Aulia. Khusro, it is said, gave up his life the day after he learned the day of his Pir Nizamuddin Aulia. He was buried in the same compound. Apart from poetry, a strong school of history writing in Persia developed in India during the period. History writing in Persian developed in India during the period. The most famous historians of this period were Ziauddin Barani, Afif, and Isami. Through the Persian language, India was able to develop close cultural relations with Central Asia and Iran. In course of time, Persian became not only the language of administration and diplomacy, but also the language of upper classes and their dependents at first in North India and later in the entire country with the expansion of the Delhi Sultanate to the south and establishment of the Muslim kingdoms in different parts of the country. Thus, Sanskrit and Persian in the main function as link languages in the country in politics, religion, and philosophy, as well as being means of literary productions. At first, there was little interchange between the two. Zia Naqshbandi was the first to translate into Persian Sanskrit stories which were related by a parrot to a woman whose husband had gone on a journey. This book, Tuti Nama, Book of the Parrot, written in the time of Muhammad Tughlaq, proved very popular and was translated from Persian into Turkish and into many European languages as well. He also translated the old Indian treatise on sexuology, the Kok Shastra, into Persian. Later in the time of Firoz Shah, Sanskrit books on medicine and music were translated into Persian. Sultan Zainul Abidin of Kashmir had the famous historical work Raj Tarangini and the Mahabharata translated into Persian. At his resistance, Sanskrit works on medicine and music were also translated into Persian. Recent research shows that some works on mathematics, astronomy, and medicine were translated into Sanskrit during this period. The famous terms here would be since Zia Naqshbandi was the first person to translate Persian Sanskrit stories which were related by a parrot to a woman. It's called Tuti Nama, Book of the Parrot. It was during Muhammad Tughlaq's reign. Similarly, uh, he also translated the old Indian treatise on sexuology, the Kok Shastra, into Persian, and the Sultan Zainul Abidin of Kashmir translated the historical work of Rajat Rangini and Mahabharat into Persian. Regional languages. During this period, literary works of high quality were produced in many of the regional languages as well. Many of these languages, such as Hindi, Bengali, and Marathi, trace their origins back to the 8th century or so. Some other, such as Tamil, were much older. Written in the beginning of the 14th century, Amir Khusro had noted the existence of regional languages and remarked, these languages have from ancient times applied in every way to the common purposes of life. The rise to maturity of many of these languages and their use as means for literary works may be considered a striking feature of the medieval period. There were many reasons for this. Perhaps with the loss of prestige by the Brahmanas, Sanskrit also lost some of its prestige. The use of common language by the Bhakti saints was undoubtedly an important factor in the rise of these languages. In fact, in many parts of the country, the early saints fashioned these languages for literary purposes. It seems that in many regional kingdoms of the pre-Turkish period, regional languages such as Tamil, Kannada, Marathi, etc., were used for administrative purposes in addition to Sanskrit. This must have continued under the Turkish rule, for we hear of Hindi knowing revenue accountants appointed in the Delhi Sultanate. Later, when the Delhi Sultanate broke up, local languages, in addition to Persian, continued to be used for administrative purpose in many of the regional kingdoms. Thus, literature in Telugu developed in South India under the patronage of Vijayanagar rulers. Marathi was one of the administrative languages in the Bahmani kingdom and later at the court of Bijapur. In course of time, when these languages had reached a certain stage of development, some of the Muslim kings gave them patronage for literary purposes also. For example, Nusrat Shah of Bengal had the Mahabharata and the Ramayana translated into Bengali. Baladhar Basu also translated the Bhagavata into Bengali under his patronage. His patronage of Bengali poets has been mentioned earlier. The use of Bhakti poems in Hindi by the Sufi saints in their musical gatherings has been mentioned before. In Jaunpur, a Sufi saint such as Malik Muhammad Jaisi wrote in Hindi and put forward Sufi concepts in a form which could be easily understood by the common man. They popularized many Persian forms such as the Masnavi, fine arts. Steps towards mutual understanding and integration are to be found not only in the fields of religious beliefs and rituals, architecture and literature, but also in the fields of fine arts, particularly music. When the Turks came to India, they inherited the rich Arab tradition of music which had been further developed in Iran and Central Asia. They brought with them a number of new musical instruments such as rabab and sarangi, and new musical modes and regulations. Indian music and Indian musicians at the court of the caliphs at Baghdad had possibly influenced the development of music there. However, systematic contact between the two began in India under the Sultanate. We have also already referred to Amir Khusro. Khusro, who was given the title of Nayak or Master of both the theory and practice of music, introduced many Perso-Arabic airs, rags such as Aman, Ghura, Sanam, etc. He is credited with having invented the sitar, though we have no evidence of it. The tabla, which is also attributed to him, seems, however, to have developed during the late 17th and early 18th century. The process of integration in the field of music continued under Feroz, who used to listen to music every Friday after Nawaz. The Indian classical work Rag Darpan was translated into Persian during his reign. During this reign, musical gatherings spread from the abodes of the Sufis to the palaces of the nobles. Sultan Hussain Sharki, the ruler of Jaunpur, was a great patron of music. The Sufi saint Pir Budhan is supposed to have been the second great musician of the age. Another regional kingdom where music was highly cultivated was the kingdom of Gwalior. Raja Man Singh of Gwalior was a great music lover. The work Man Kautuhal, in which all the new musical modes introduced by the Muslims were included, was prepared under his aegis. We do not know at what time the musical modes in North India began to differ from those in the South, but there is little doubt that the differentiation was largely due to the incorporation of Perso-Arabic modes, airs, and scales, a distinctive style of music influenced in considerable measure by Persian music developed in the kingdom of Kashmir. After the conquest of Jaunpur, Sikandar Lodi followed its tradition of patronizing music on a lavish scale, tradition which was adopted by the Mughal rulers later on. So, in this passage on fine arts, we have to remember the instruments which are rabab, sarangi, sitar, and tabla. So, the Indian classical work which was translated into Persian during Firuz Tughlaq's reign was Raga Darpan. Sultan Hussain Sharki of the Jaunpur kingdom was a great patron, Pir Bhutan was a great patron, and Raja Man Singh of Gwalior was a patron of music. And during his reign, the work Man Kautuhal was prepared, which included all the new musical modes introduced by the Muslims. So, with this, we have come to an end of this chapter on cultural development in India. I'll see you guys in the next video. Till then, see ya. Bye.